A farm in Louisiana has contracted a staffing agency group to help them find employees, to pick blueberries on their farm. I wonder who these people voted for, and I wonder what happened to all their employees. But let's look at the criteria, the requirements for this employment. So this is a 3-month contract from May to July. You will be working 7 days a week. So you will work every day for 3 months. You will work 9 to 10 hours a day for $11 per hour. And I looked at this little small town city in Louisiana, and it's in the 80s.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, you're going to be looking at MAGA farmers who are only now coming out and talking about how they regret voting for Trump.
Right, and in today's episode, you're going to be seeing a lot of Americans, both white and black, coming onto the internet and basically telling them, we told you so.
Right, so let's watch what we prepared for you and then we come back and talk about it. Let us know, what do you think about this episode on the comment section. Also consider subscribing if it's your first time here, right? Let's watch and then we come back.
So for 3 months straight, you're going to be working 7 days a week. You're going to work every day for 10 hours a day for $11 per hour. I see why they needed a staffing agency. We already know that this is a town that went red, that voted for Trump. And now they don't have any employees. And I'm almost positive most of their employees were probably immigrants, some undocumented, some documented. And I hope the ones that do have their papers, that do have their citizenship or whatever, I hope that they don't work anymore. I hope that they quit. Make these farmers pick their own damn blueberries, okay? Because this requirement, to work here is actually crazy. It's actually crazy. And nobody should have to work 7 days per week in 90-degree weather every freaking day for $11. That's crazy. Pick your own damn blueberries. This is what y'all get. You're in your F around and find out season. And you want to know what's going to happen? What I believe is going to happen? Slave labor is going to be prison labor. Pretty soon these farmers are going to start making deals with prisons and stuff like that. And they're going to have those prisoners out there picking strawberries and blueberries. Watch. That's what's going to happen.
Look, here comes the consequences of my actions chasing me right now. I don't want no consequence. I don't want no consequences chasing me right now.
So a lot of people may have missed it, but have y'all seen this? So first, let me describe what you're seeing. What you are seeing is a protest by Maine farmers. These are people, by and large, who voted for and supported Donald Trump. While Kamala won the state of Maine, and she won it by not the margins that you would typically see when there was a clear difference between what Donald Trump was saying and what Kamala was saying. He won, Donald Trump won this specific district where there is a significant population of rural voters and farmers. So this is how the news in Maine explain this situation.
The Department of Agriculture has angered those who work on small farms across the state.
Political reporter Kate McCusker heard from Maine's farmers who gathered to protest in Augusta today.
With some arriving on tractors and one even carrying a bucket of manure, today Maine farmers gathering to protest recent cuts by the Trump administration. Several farmers from across the state spoke out against recent cuts by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to school lunch programs and food banks. They say federal funding is crucial for small farmers to sustain their business. Some say they've already invested money that the federal government had promised to reimburse them for, or have signed contracts to support them. And overall, they say the uncertainty and confusion is hurting the industry.
This is not a partisan issue for me. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a Mainer who thinks we need farms and farmers to feed people in our state.
So Maine farmers, help me to do the math here. 1 + 1 = 2. The sky is what color? Blue. If someone tells you who they are, it's best you believe them. Donald Trump said that these were the things that he was going to do, and he did them. He talked about tariffs, and he talked about cutting the Department of Agriculture. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. This is your around and find out moment. Just enjoy it. Take it like a man or woman. You voted for this. This is exactly what you deserve.
Y'all, I have some mixed feelings about these farmers that are getting screwed over by these tariffs. There's part of me that wants to laugh in their faces and say, congratulations, you got exactly what you voted for, bro. And then there's another side of me that understands that these people are just too simple and don't really understand what they did.
You don't want to hear the price I'm about to give you. I said, well, give it to me anyways. He said, each of those steaks now is going to be $1.74 a piece. I said, well,
double the price.
We can't do that, and that's going to be impossible. So that's just to let you know a little bit of what we're going through out here on our farm and what farmers in general are going through. These tariffs, not the best thing for our country. I voted for Trump.
Now, if you didn't catch that at the end, he said, these tariffs aren't the best thing for our country, and I voted for Trump. These people don't really pay attention to the news. These are people that just listen to what Earl says down at the diner, and he's voted Republican his whole life because they're the party of God. And speaking of God, there are a lot of these farmers that say, you know what? I'm not that worried because God's got this.
Of faith, and our faith is in God and not in administration.
In agriculture, there's about 85% of what happens on my farm that is completely out of my control. Yeah. So I have to do the very best I can at managing that 15% of inputs and costs and labor and marketing and signing the best contract and doing the best job that I can and leave the other 85% up to the good Lord. And that's all we can do, whether it's weather or disease or a hailstorm or a pandemic or administration.
They're trying to compare these tariffs to a natural disaster, but this isn't a natural disaster. This was a decision made by one man who is screwing them over. And they're just like, well, it's in the Lord's hands. What can we do? And this, again, is why religion is so dangerous. They're willing to accept financial ruin because the Lord's got this, so I'm not going to be worried about what Trump decides to do. And my friends over at the Cowboy Church told me that God put him in office for a reason. And that's just it. When you think that there's a supernatural force just watching over you at all times, nothing matters. Your family might starve. Well, if that's what God wants, who am I to argue with him? If you don't get your kid vaccinated, they could easily die of a disease that's easily preventable. Well, if that's what the Lord wants, I'm not going to be able to stop him. And that is why religion is one of the most dangerous things on this planet. Because these people have been convinced that they are completely out of control of things that they could completely control if they wanted to. And the sad thing is that we need our farmers, but Darwinism is going to take them all away from us if they don't get away from this Christian nationalist way of thinking. Unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. Do you?
Well, it happened. The tariffs are now hitting American farmers, and they are making TikTok videos left, right, and center complaining about the costs of actually running their farms. You got to watch this.
I called 2 weeks ago to get a quote on these fiberglass steaks because we need some more steaks this year. I got a quote, 83 cents. I called the man this morning. I said, hey, I know these tariffs are crazy and everything going on. I said, what can you do me on those fiberglass steaks now if we needed a load? It's a 3-month ETA from time you place the order. He said, Taylor, you don't want to hear this price that I'm about to give you. And I said, well, give it to me anyways. He said, each of those steaks now is going to be $1.74 a piece. And I said, well, you know, and I know both that we can't do that, and that's going to be impossible. Just to let you know a little bit of what we're going through out here on our farm and what farmers in general are going through. These tariffs, not the best thing for our country. I voted for Trump.
So the big question is, the Republican Congress people and senators, who are they afraid of? Think about it. Who are they afraid of? The current administration is not going to pew-pew them or send them to El Salvador. That's going to look pretty bad, no? I believe they're all part of a big mafia ring, and somebody promised these people big dividends when this is all over. For a bunch of people who are supposed to be so intelligent, why would you destroy your own country? The more people that you have working, paying taxes, this is not about fentanyl. This is not about criminals, because if ICE can pick up people off the street and find people who they deem illegal, they can also find these drug dealers. And if that's the case and you want to get rid of these people, then lock them up in your own jails. But there seems to be a backroom deal that's going on, and the average American is going to pay for it.
Wow, mainstream media is having a massive meltdown. So as many of you guys have probably already seen, after the debates, there's normally questions being asked by the media. It didn't happen yesterday after the English debates, and I had no idea why. And then I started seeing some clips from behind the scenes of independent media outlets recording others like the Hill Times, and it looked like it was the CBC, and they were losing it. They were absolutely livid, going off on independent media, basically telling them, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. You know, you're doing this on behalf of third-party advertisers. The nonsense that was coming out, it made them look absolutely insane. I was actually shocked by some of the things that were being said. These are supposed to be our legitimate news stations. These are supposed to be the legitimate news sources that we're supposed to go to for our day-to-day information. This is what mainstream media has become. They are so far left and far gone that they're so bothered by the fact that once in every 4 years, independent news media outlets get to ask 1 or 2 questions to our political leaders. When literally about 99% of the time when they try asking those questions, they refuse to. Look at Jagmeet Singh. He was asked a legitimate question after the French debates. He refused to answer. He said, no, I'm not going to answer. You know, your news outlet is misinformation and disinformation. He didn't like the way the question was worded. But I guess the left had created such a massive outrage yesterday, and they created themselves apparently some sort of a security incident. And I honestly don't buy it for a second. I think it has to do with the fact that how disastrous both Mark Carney and Jagmeet Singh were when they were asked legitimate questions from independent media. And the reason I'm using independent media is when you have state-funded media, you work for the government. CBC is literally a crown corporation owned by the government who receives billions of dollars from the government. What sort of independence is there? Did you know that CBC gets over twice as much funding than CSIS does? Imagine the US, just as an example, subsidizing, Fox News in the tunes of billions of dollars, and they get more money than the CIA got. The whole world would lose it. Why are we allowing this? Why is this okay? Why is this normal? It's not. CBC needs to be completely reformed and completely revamped. How do you measure the success of content? It's simple. How many people consume it? It doesn't matter if they read it, if they see it on TV, or if they see it here on the phone. It's how they consume it. CBC literally spends hundreds of millions of dollars bringing news content to TV stations that no one's watching. In fact, I can almost guarantee that this video here, as it makes its rounds, than any sort of CBC news. I'm just a guy in my basement with the phone. And I don't know if you know this, but I get more views than CBC and CTV combined. So what does that tell you? Should I get $1 billion? They are so desperate to keep independent media outlets quiet because their views are now surpassing billion-dollar organizations owned by the federal government. The madness needs to end. CBC needs massive reform. They need a massive digital transformation, and it all.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section. Yeah, one question I have for everybody is I just want to know, did these MAGA farmers ever think that them voting for Trump would end up with them living in regret? Because right now we are looking at a situation where a lot of farms in America, from the information we've gotten, were being worked on by immigrants, right? So when Trump began his mass deportation, a lot of these immigrants, some of them were either deported, and majority of them were living in hiding. They didn't want to come out because, as you can imagine, some of them have to be illegal.
Right. And the thing that I have gotten with what everybody has said today is religion played a very big part in how the farmers voted, especially in Louisiana and Maine, because the farmer who was complaining here kept mentioning God a lot, and he kept referencing to it was the will of God for Donald Trump to be here, and he even likened Trump being in office now to a natural disaster. So he was saying that whatever is happening right now with the tariffs and them not being able to afford farm products and workers, that was like when a natural disaster hits, like for example a hurricane, you know.
Oh my God.
Yes.
How do you compare Trump's leadership to a natural disaster? I feel like
this was a
man-made
disaster.
Yeah, this kind of people would rather speak in circles and say anything and talk about anything other than accepting responsibility, because I feel like the only way change comes into a society is by you first acknowledging the mistake you did, or acknowledging the role you played into a certain situation becoming what it is, you know.
And right now, I think we can all agree in this platform that Trump being in office is not a natural disaster. And we all know very well man-made and natural disasters, and it's yet to be seen. But I think through this FAFO season, most of them have truly seen how their votes impacted them themselves in comparison to how they thought it was going to affect every other person but themselves.
Yeah, and guys, we did an episode where we were talking about black farmers and them not complaining. Yeah, I feel like it's not that black farmers don't have anything to complain about, only that they were used to living into a certain system that oppressed them, you know, and they found another way to be productive without having to
necessarily or totally rely
on the government, because even loans, they're being denied. Yeah, but now white farmers are finding themselves in a very peculiar position, because they're not used to like living in difficulties. Yeah, so like for them it's just strange, but I feel like they're still deflating their responsibility, you know. Right now is when they're finding out how it is to have to farm in difficulties, you know.
And when Americans come together to blame them amongst other people who voted for Trump, I really do feel like they're justified and they should be able to blame them, you know, because at the end of the day, they're the ones. Right now how America is looking, maybe in future it will be better. Who knows? We have to give Trump time to see whether these policies will, in the long term, are gonna work or not. But for now, it is appearing as if these farmers, amongst other people, they collectively worked together to destroy America. Right now, that is how it's looking like.
Yeah, and there's that lady who was talking, and she was just presenting how there are farms that are getting in contact with agencies to find them workers. The advertisement that they were paying $11 per hour, you know. And I'm like, okay, these people, their excuse for voting for Trump and wanting the mass deportation to carry through was that it's because according to them, immigrants were taking away their jobs, you know. So now those jobs have been left vacant. So why is it still that you still have or need to advertise these types of jobs for people to go? And another question is, are Americans really going to take, especially the white ones, are they going to take these jobs, or who do they expect to work on those farms, you know?
Right. And right now we can't be forgiven for thinking these are exactly the same type of farmers who thought if they'd voted to take out Mexicans, then black people would somehow be forced to work in their farms for way cheaper than what they were paying the Latino workers.
That must be dumb, you know, because another thing I have to say is that I feel like not just in America, but in any other country, like immigrants, especially the illegal ones, they're normally treated like they don't have rights. So you can imagine the conditions they used to put these immigrants through when they were working in those farms. You know, sometimes maybe I know there are employers who take advantage and threaten them with immigration every time they violate their human rights, you know. And I know for sure that some of them may be underpaid or mistreated, just whatever kind of of unhealthy environmental factor that was going on. I know they were putting these immigrants through that. Question is, are they ready to play by the book now that, let's just say, their fellow Americans are going to be taking up these jobs? Let's assume that is happening. They're going to be forced to play by the book, you know.
Right. And
otherwise
also,
they'll be open for, what is it called, being sued.
And also another big question I had is, most of them are offering $11 an hour for their workers. And I really don't know. To me, I feel like this amount of money is a bit small, especially for the American economy, for people to survive on, you know. I do feel like it's small.
For
if that was
American
the kind of
economy,
money that was being paid for farmers who are employing here in Africa, then that is enough and very good
money.
to even make the farm workers wealthy, you know. But in America,
life is
the way we've had it, life in America is very expensive, and right now tariffs and taxes are also shooting through the roofs, and inflation. So I don't know, in my point of view, I feel like this pay to make someone work 7 days a week without a break, I feel like it's a bit unfair. I don't know.
Putting in mind that you have to clock in crazy hours. For example, if you're working from 8 or 9 to 5 p.m. So what time do you have for yourself, like personal time, you know?
Yeah, and you know, these hours, 10 hours per day, this means that these workers won't even have personal time to go and venture into their personal interests or start up small businesses that will support their source of income, or even have 2 jobs at the same time, you know. It won't be possible.
In essence, somebody will be owning you and your time. But guys, let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. We'd really like to hear from you. And also another question I want to ask is, because the immigrants were taking up the jobs, do you think Americans, especially in these red states, do you think the white Americans or just Americans in general might be interested or might go for such jobs? Because I do believe that there are certain jobs that are considered lowly, you know,
in America,
because even here in Kenya, there are certain jobs that immigrants do that Kenyans wouldn't do, right?
I think it's in every country.
In every country, right? So now that the immigrants are being deported or are hiding out, do you think Americans, again, the ones who are jobless, are gonna be taking up these jobs?
And
Let us know.
and someone was saying that maybe the government or the policies that were implemented was exactly to create this sort of problem, so that when the powers that be start using prisoners to provide labor to you, you'll find it like it's a relief or it's a better option compared to having no workers at all, hence your work stopping. So it's like paving way to, you know, the slavery that's to come for prisoners, that is.
Anyway, guys, let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section. As usual, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this one. Consider subscribing if it's your first time here, and let's catch you on our next episode.